is Omotola Fawunmi, very briefly, and I see myself as a creative catalyst. I'm very excited to be with you today because you represent the people who will change this country and this continent. You represent the people who are discontent with what we have today. Am I correct? You represent the people who are angry, but you're not angry for the sake of being angry. You are angry because you think we can do better. Is that correct? Are we together? I need responses. You think we can do better? You think we can create a better future than what we have currently? Okay, and that's the subject of my discussion. I'm a young, very curious lady, and I believe that everybody has a problem they were created to solve. I believe we did not just happen to appear on this side of earth. Are we together? And if we appeared on this side of earth, it's because what we know as creation is incomplete. And we can not only create new things, are you with me? But leave it better than how we met it. And so I don't want us to be cool about it. As I go through my subject matter, which is sustainable human development, I want you to start to think of the things you want to change. And don't think of the big things. Think of the tiny little things. Think of the microsystems that we can form where we are. Okay? Think of the problems. There are too many of them. There's problem in education. There's problem in the healthcare system, right? There's problem in our environment. We have people who are dying from malaria, which can be solved by cheap drugs. The problems are numerous, and it gets me very angry. But this generation would not be forgiven if we have all these tools and still cannot create a new future. Is that correct? I need you to please respond. Are you angry? We sound like we're very cool. Well, okay, the environment is... You are here because you can afford to pay school fees, isn't it? You are here because you can afford to buy books. Will the next generation be able to afford books? Will the next generation be able to have classrooms? They don't have classrooms. Oh, they don't? I'm glad you know. And that's our concern. What are we trying to change? There is a people, who created this system that we have now. There is a system that created those people. Can we change the system? I told you it's a discussion, a deeper discussion. Technology is good and it's helped us, but only to a particular level. Like the last speaker mentioned, we have become closer yet lonelier. We communicate via our BlackBerry phones, but we don't know our neighbors, and we don't know the pains and cries of our neighbors. There are tiny little problems that you and I can solve, that 200 naira, 300 naira, 500 naira exercise book, notebooks can solve. But do you know these people? Do you speak to them? Do you speak to them? Do you know your neighbor? Do you ask that child, why didn't you go to school today? We are creating a system of individuals, highly successful individuals, but very weak institutions. And as long as we continue along this line, I want to be very rich, you want to be very rich, you are individually successful, but we are communally poor. Is it sustainable? Can we continue this way? I don't think so. But we cannot afford to wait for government to solve this problem. Why? Because a system that created the quality of government that we have now does not have the solution. The solution is created by people who are thinking. Do our schools teach us to think? I studied history and international relations on this campus. And I remember my first year, because I couldn't quite connect what I was going to be doing after university with what I was studying. It was a big problem. So I wanted to change to law, because that's what I wanted to do. It was very difficult. I was studying history, international relations. Everybody says because of the word international relations, it's a good course, isn't it? I heard that all the time. But what problem am I going to solve? I had no books, I had nothing, I didn't understand foreign policy, systems, development. It didn't make sense to me. I was a year one student. But in my second year, after I took a course on the history of Nigeria, then I began to find something to live for. Understanding how education of Awolowo, Azikiwe, and Tafawa Balewa, who were educated partly in this country and went out, gained some knowledge, and the exposure which they got, they came back here to fight. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. It means that as long as we are within a system that frustrates thinking, we cannot solve these problems. And what happens? Each individual lives for himself. In the long run, we will all self-destruct. Occupy Nigeria was one example of what we can do together. And let's start to think community. We need to engage beyond anger. Channel this anger in the right direction. Channel anger for change. So sometime in 2010, I learned of a little girl who was on her way from school and rushing home to use the toilet. Unfortunately, she stumbled around a soakaway pit and died there. She was 13. She was very intelligent. She was attending a public school. And I got very angry. Very angry because that girl could have been the Okonjo Iweala we now know today. Because that girl could have been Obieze Kwesili. But that girl could have been the teacher who taught me English, which I now speak. And what value do we place on the human life? Can we change that? Can we start to recognize that human beings are the only reasons why this entire space called the world would continue to exist? What will you do differently? Anybody? What would you do differently? This child died, but my anger was not enough. And we started a tiny project. Tiny. It's called the Toilet Advocacy Project. Teaching basic things about hand washing. And we did not know how far that would go. It took us into villages, into schools. And you'll be amazed the number of schools that still use pit toilets today. Pit toilets in the 21st century. Pit toilets, while so many other people build houses they will never live in. These blocks can be used to create not just toilets, but facilities that will provide jobs for more people. You can have professional toilet cleaners who would clean these toilets and would earn a living from it. We can have the products of these toilets converted, first separated, biogas. Biogas will generate power, it will generate electricity, we can cook with it. It's bigger than me, it's bigger than you, but then the next generation will benefit from it. How many of you are thinking that way? Anybody? I want us to think deeply about what I can do for the future. We must not compromise today. We must not compromise the quality of life that we would live today by amassing for self alone. It may last only for a while. But what would you leave? Malcolm X has died. Martin Luther King has died. Nelson Mandela is still alive and is celebrated. It's really rare. I'm not saying live to be celebrated. I'm saying leave something for other people to benefit. And that's how the human race can continue. What are the practical things we can do? First, our school system. So I'm going to focus on education as the tool for changing the mind, changing the system. What is in our school curriculum? Like Okbayemi mentioned earlier, what we need to solve today's problems have not been created in the school curriculum. What are you seeing? What can you solve? I see life skills as one of the issues that have not yet been addressed. So you're a graduate, but you cannot communicate in English. You're a graduate, you cannot make presentations. Why can't you make presentations? You cannot make presentations because the school system never demanded it from you. You were never asked thinking questions. You were asked to do. Unfortunately, it's interesting because we're supposed to be human beings and not human doings. But we're in a hurry to do. Exert energy at the expense of using the brain to solve more problems. I just want to challenge us today. I don't have the answer to a lot of our questions, but it's to start a thinking process. What will I do differently? If you live in Lagos, if you live in the highbrow areas, beautiful. But if you live in a community, get involved in your community beyond paying your fees and levies. You can have 3, 4, 5 kids that you directly mentor. And as a result of your own leadership, these people's lives will change. Does that make sense? Let's engage the community and solve real problems, not hypothetical problems. The reason why the local government chairman will continue to cheat us is because we are not aware of what is allocated to him. And then he doesn't think he owes you because you don't make demands. Do we know what we need to ask for? The tiny person needs to be educated. We need to educate people. We have Twitter, we have Blackberries, we have Facebook. The people in the villages, not villages, tiny suburbs in Lagos may not be able to afford the subscription. Let's help us together share this knowledge and provoke them to ask questions. Provoke them to engage in meaningful discussions. Provoke them to truly be willing to learn. And I'll end by saying, what are we learning? What do we need to unlearn? What do we need to relearn? There's a system that worked before. There's a system that has stopped working but we're still using. How do we change this? Are you upset? In the future, would you be proud of having been part of this discussion? Discussions are not enough. It goes beyond me, it goes beyond you. Let's think of us 10, 20, 30 years from now. What would I do differently? What can I do now? What can I start now to provoke the future to come faster than we thought? So I'll ask a question again. What would you do differently? Anybody wants to answer me? No, I don't need us also, brother. What would you do differently? What do you need to learn? The environment in Ife is conducive for learning. How do we create more environments like this within communities? If a child wants to read, you live in a face my face you, where there's so much noise and you have, how do you read? And then you ask that these children don't pass jam. They can't. It's impossible. You don't have textbooks. How do we create, what resources can we harness? What the architects, the engineers, what can we do to create environments that inspire learning? The reason why corruption thrives is because this system, this human system, supports it. We endorse it. It's not one person, it's systemic corruption. It's been institutionalized. So that the way we've institutionalized corruption, let's institutionalize more positive things. There are 1,001,001 ideas. But I hope this triggers in your mind what you can do. And I can tell you, if you stretch your mind, collaborate with others bigger than you, there are opportunities. Funding will never be your problem. If you have the idea, start first. Start first. Before we know what's happening, we can bring down this thing we call a horrible government that has created the system of certified ignoramus. Yes. Certified whatever. What we can't do. People, you can't speak English, you can't write English, but you're a graduate of English language or even communication and language arts. What can we do better? What can we do better? I just want to challenge us. In our tiny little, let's create microsystems, strong networks. It will be, the journey is far. It will be long. But we need to be consistent. We need not to be tired. There are things bigger than us that we think are bigger than us. But these things that we think are bigger than us are not bigger than all of us. It may be bigger than me, but it can't be bigger than all of us. What we are afraid of is afraid of us. And we must focus on solving the problem. Thank you very much.